Nigeria's oil production climbed under the Tinubu administration from 1.2 million barrels when it was sworn in to 1.5 million barrels as of the first quarter of 2024. This is one of the observations made from the latest GDP figures from the Bureau of Statistics. Arise Business Correspondent Rotus Oddiri sent in this report.
Good Monday morning to all our viewers out there on Arise News. We're going to be looking at the Nigerian economy's economic growth in the first quarter of 2024. 2.98% in Q1 2024 on a year-on-year basis are the figures that came in from the Bureau of Statistics. Now let's take a look at some of the charts and some of the numbers and see exactly how well this particular figure stack up to prior figures. So Q1 2024, as we said, 2.91% year-on-year. Now, there was a slowdown from Q4 2023, which was 3.46%, but it was higher than what we saw in the first quarter of 2023, 2.31%. Why is that? The fourth quarter, historically, of course, is festive activities, the IJGBs, as they call them, the I just got back, people who fly in from overseas, a bit of partying, you've got the festive activities, parties and so on. I know this 2023, inflation was higher, there were, a number of other headwinds facing the economy, purchasing power was a bit lower, but historically Q4 is usually higher. So what usually happens is that there's a slowdown from Q1, or rather from Q4 in the prior year, coming to the first quarter of the next year. So that's what we've seen. So we move on from here now and we take a look at quarterly growth for Nigeria. So again, that 3.4% growth is your outlier. Since the first quarter of 2023, Nigeria's economy has not quite met up with population growth, but it's just there. And this needs to be improved. You've heard the Tinubu administration, particularly President Tinubu, saying he wants to achieve about 6% growth or higher. So the first quarter of 2023, 2.31%. Now, the president was sworn in the second quarter. He was sworn in May of 2023. May falls in the second quarter of the year, so 2.51%. So you can't really attribute this to him. You can perhaps start from the third quarter of the year, 2.54%. This is growth on a year-on-year basis. And then your fourth quarter of 2023, you've got 3.46%. And then the first quarter of 2024, 2.9%. So you've seen the slowdown from that particular fourth quarter. But growth did pick up from the second quarter, going to the third, going to the fourth quarter, and then slowing down in the first quarter of 2024. So, this is what we've seen so far. Now, we move on an annual basis. What has growth looked like for Nigeria on an annual basis? It hasn't been very healthy. It could be better, but then there were a couple recessions, as you can see. So going back to 2015, now this is the Buhari period, 2.79%. You had, of course, your first of two recessions under the Buhari administration, 2016, when oil prices tanked. The economy contracted by 1.5%. Then it started to recover, 0.82% in 2017. 2018, it climbed again, 1.91% in 2018, 2.27% in 2019, and then you had COVID-19, the recession, right? So 2020, the economy contracted in red there, 1.92%. Then you had the rebound in 2021, 3.4%. This is on a year or a full year. 2022, 3.1%, and then you see the slowdown to 2023, 2.74%. So that's been the story of Nigeria's economy since 2015. I think President Tinubu he was forecasting that we should do about 3.76 or so for 2024. So we'll see how that works out. Now, let's talk about oil, right? The oil and gas sector. Oil production has actually risen since President Tinubu was inaugurated in May of 2023. He's talked a lot about how he wants to improve oil production. We've talked about the ability to be able to defend the naira. You've got to produce more oil. You've got to sell more oil. You've got to bring more dollars into the economy in order to defend your currency. So let's look at the numbers that actually back that up as far as oil production rising under the president. So if we take a look at oil production, just going back, I guess, to 2020. Now, Nigeria has historically done about 2 million barrels per day, right? Historically in the past. So going back to about, over the last 6 years, from 2018 through to 2024, 2018, I think about second or third quarter from 2018, we're doing about 1.9 million barrels per day, and then things started to slow down. So we peaked in 2020, Q1 2020, you can see from the chart here, 2.07 million barrels per day. That's the highest it's been, at least over the last 4 years. And then you saw the slowdown. So Q1 of 2023, 1.5 million barrels per day. Again, the president was sworn in Q2. So in Q2 of 2023, when he was sworn in, oil was at a low, oil production of 1.2 million barrels per day. But since then, he said he's trying to, arrest oil theft. You heard the Minister of Defense in Abuja on day one of the sectoral ministerial updates, where he was talking about how they've been, clamping down on oil theft and arresting all these vessels and illegal setups in the Niger Delta and so on and so forth, illegal refineries. So again, so it's really important to note, from when the president was inaugurated, Q2 2023, 1.2 million barrels per day. In the third quarter of 2023, we're at 1.45. In the fourth quarter of 2023, we're at 1.55. And now the first quarter of 2024, 1.57 million barrels per day. Nigeria still needs to ramp this up. In fact, this just gets us to about where I think our quota is for OPEC. But from our budget, which is about 1.7, at least for 2024, that doesn't get us. We're not quite there yet. So we're still underperforming what the budget benchmarks are for oil production. So essentially, this has to increase. But on a positive note, it is climbing. You got to get us back to 2 million. The president wants to get to about 4 million, even more by 2027 and beyond. So it is important you get more oil and gas majors, exploring, and getting, reducing theft and also aging infrastructure. A lot has to be done there. So now, if we look at the oil sector as far as its own performance, in the first quarter of 2024, the oil sector year on year, this is when you annualize, first quarter 5.7%. Now, big slowdown from Q4 of 2023 was 12.1% in that period. And that, although is still better than where we were in the first quarter of 2023, when the oil sector contracted by 4.2%. In fact, until about the first quarter of this year, third quarter of 2023, you've seen the oil sector pretty much be in recession, as far as the contraction is concerned. Now, its contribution, though, to GDP, this is in the first quarter of this year, was 6.38%. So it's been the same story every time we review our GDP figures, our economic figures. It's the non-oil sector that has really driven Nigeria's growth. So let's take a look at the non-oil sector growth. Now, you'll notice that this 2.8% is lower than the 5.7% you saw for the oil sector. But 2.8%, that's for Q1 2024. It's a slowdown from what we saw in Q4 of 2023 of 3.08%. First quarter of 2023, just slightly ahead of this quarter, 2.78%. But look at the contribution to GDP. 93.62%. So you can see that in terms of contributing to the economy, it's the non-oil sector. However, it's kind of, even though the oil sector contributes so little, it's still the main source of foreign exchange, which is why we need to ramp up diversifying Nigeria's income base so that we can earn foreign exchange from other sectors besides oil. So that's what we're seeing with the contribution to economic growth. But now let's look at the top 10 contributing activities. This is part of what we're seeing with the non-oil sector. You'll see crop production there at number 1, 19.24%. You've got trade in second place, 15.7%. Again, this is in the first quarter, first 3 months of 2024. Telecommunications and information services, 14.5. You got crude, petroleum, and natural gas at 6.3. You got financial institutions, 6.3. Then you got real estate, food, beverage, and tobacco, construction, professional, scientific, technical services, and other services. Now, the thing is, let's break it down even further. Even though crop production is number 1, look at this chart. This essentially puts everything together in perspective. This is not healthy growth, right? So even though crop production is number 1, to the last column on your screen, or rather, to the far right, Q1 2024, right? Look at agriculture, 0.18% growth. I mean, it even contracted in the first quarter of 2023. Look at mining and quarrying. From the fourth quarter of 2023, 8.04%, 6.3%, so that's slowed down. Look at manufacturing. How important is manufacturing to Nigeria's economy? 1.4%. Look at electricity, gas, and steam. That was a contraction. Water supply, 6.9%. Look at construction, minus 2.14%, so that's contracted. Even though trade was in your top three in terms of contributing to the economy, 1.23% growth in the first quarter of this year. And then look at transportation and storage. That's, it's been in recession territory for a while. It only just came out to 3.3%. ICT 5.4%, but historically ICT, look at where it was in the first quarter of 2023, 10.32%, slowing to 8.6%, slowing to 6.69%, slowing to 6.33%, slowing to 5.43%. So it's only financial services and insurance where you can see green all the way. 21.37 from the first quarter of 2023, growing to 26.84, climbing again to 28.21, climbing again to 29.78, climbing to 31.24 in the first quarter of 2024. But other than that, you look at real estate, 0.84, professional services, and you go down the line. Nigeria's economy, as far as the sectors are concerned, they really need to improve. And this is why it's so much light needs to be, focused on the ministers, right? Because each of these ministers have their portfolios, and these portfolios, as far as how well they are performing, those portfolios are going to be, as far as how well they've performed, you will see that in the GDP figures. So, the takeaway from what we've seen here essentially is that Nigeria's economy still has a ways to go. There are a lot of headwinds. Of course, fuel subsidies have been removed. Inflation is higher. The exchange rate, all those reforms that have been put in place, they have had an effect. And you're seeing the effect on the sectors. So Nigeria still needs to grow faster in terms of being able to provide, inclusive economic growth for its citizens. Work still needs to be done as far as the Nigerian economy is concerned.
Thank you very much, Rotus. Brilliant report there. But two quick things. On oil and gas, we still need to ask the question. Why are the IOCs divesting from Nigeria? Total Energies just says it prefers Angola to Nigeria. They're investing $6 billion in Angola, and they say Nigeria is a very difficult place, even as rich as Nigeria is in terms of resources. And then in terms of GDP growth, 2.98, percent growth is not something that a country of over 200 billion people should be celebrating. We've been talking in terms of double-digit, growth. We don't have that, So whatever else is in that bracket, whether from 2.98 to 3.1 or 3.3 that was projected, we're still not there. We have a lot to do, even as we celebrate 1 year of the Tinubu administration.